It's our special holiday week programming, and tonight it's all Victor Davis Hanson, all VDH all the time. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the Hanson. And we're going through his article at American Greatness, 10 Steps to Save America. And I've gotten to the one that I know people are screaming back at the television set, Professor Hanson. It's like, oh, none of this matters because our voting system is rigged. We participate, we donate, we knock on doors, we stand on the sidelines, we go to rallies, we go out and vote, and it doesn't matter because the whole thing is rigged. There's nothing more insidious right now in this country about the feeling that votes don't matter because there's something wrong with the system. So, fix voting. How do we fix voting?
Oh, I think we, under the guise of COVID, it was very radical. We went state by state. I think I could generalize that we went from 70% of the electorate voting on election day to 30%. And that was because of early voting and mail-in balloting. And there's no idea anymore of an absentee vote that you request because you're ill or going to be out of town. It's become you just, one day you go look at your mail and you've got a ballot. So it's a mail-in ballot, and we know that they being the left, changed the voting laws in many key states in March and April of 2020, and so they could come in after the election. The postmark was flexible, what the date was when it would arrive. The signature, the address could be partial or inexact. It didn't have to exactly match the registrar's lane. You had third-party vote harvesting. You had vote curing, where the vote could be corrected, the information that was faulty. All of that meant that election day as we know it no longer exists, and election night tabulation no longer. And so I think it was tragic because the Republicans and the rights kept focusing, as they should, on voter ID. You got to have voter ID. And the left thought, okay, we're going to make a big issue that you don't have it. And while everybody was fighting in the living room over voter ID, they burned down the kitchen through non-election day voting, where should have been the emphasis of the conservative movement, because in 2018, 2020, they had warning of what was coming, that when you have 70% of the electorate is not voting on election day, and given all the things I said, it's almost impossible to authenticate a vote. And they know that, and they feel they've mastered that methodology, and we don't know how to do it, or it's too high tech for us, or what. But once again, the third time we've been completely bushwhacked by it.
Win or lose, our republic needs every voter to walk away thinking, well, at least it was done in a fair and square way. The problem is you can't fix voting unless you win the election first, right?
Exactly. Yes, and that's the paradox.
Yeah. Let's move on to drain the swamp. It's a nice catchphrase, but what do you mean by it?
We have 2 million people working for the federal government, and they're becoming judge, jury, and executioner in the sense that the federal corpus of laws and bureaucracies are so complex that you have these lifelong employees that know more about it than elected officials who are supposed to have oversight. And so you get to this point when you have Christopher Wray, who's an employee of the federal government and should be overseen by the DOJ, who themselves are overseen by Congress. And he just simply says to Senator Grassley, well, I've got to go. I have an appointment. I'm going to get in the FBI jet and fly to my vacation home. And everybody said, okay. Or you have John Brennan, who says, we don't spy on Senate staff or computers, and he knew that was a lie. Or James Clapper lies about the NSA, and he just says, I just gave the least untruthful answer. Or Andrew McCabe says, well, I wasn't the source of an FBI leak. 4 times he lies to a federal, and there's no consequences. And we have Lois Lerner, or when you have Merrick Garland, who's sicking the FBI after parents at school board. So these guys in the federal government, that I think they're out of control, and it's not just partisan. There's too many federal employees. They're too powerful, and what they do is too complex for an elected official in a 2 or 4 or 6-year term, or a senator to understand it. And I think we need to break it up. So I would take a lot of the major cabinetcies, put them in, energy in Houston, agriculture in Fresno, HHS in Casper, Wyoming or something, break it up and let regional people deal. So you don't have that incestuous culture in Washington between media and politics and bureaucrats.
Hey, you're trying to reduce the population of my town here.
Yes, I am. I am.
I understand. Well, I mean, listen, we don't live in the late 18th century anymore. We should be, with high tech, everybody works from home after COVID. We should be able to get the nation's business done with offices regionally around the nation, you would think. That may lead us to your next point here, which is upend the welfare state, because as you reduce power out of Washington, D.C., that does, in fact, upend what we know to be the welfare state, does it not?
It does, and under the guy, never let a crisis go to waste moment of COVID, we really inflated the amount of money, state and federal, that went to people who were not employed. So, you get these sensationalized stories in some states of families of 4 or 5 who are receiving $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 in various entitlements.
Yeah.
And whether that is, alarmist or not, when you look at the key thing to look at is the labor participation rate, and it's only about 61% now. It's at an all-time low. We've got about 40% of the workforce that's able to work and won't work.
And is it because they went home and sort of got just enough to get by, and they sort of thought, hey, you know what? This is okay. I can live this way. I can pursue my dreams. I can read a book. I can play a video game, and life's not bad.
I think a lot of it was that. I think the incentives to do that in adjusted for inflation have increased. I think a lot of people are still afraid of COVID. They never quite got over the fear of going out into an office or a crowd. I just read a statistic that 7 million people in the workforce have long COVID. They are fatigued. They don't quite get over the acute phase for many months. There's a lot of contributing factors, but if we don't solve it, it doesn't matter whether we're in a recession or boom time. When you look at the unemployment rate, it's very, very low, but it doesn't really reflect the real truth of the labor non-participation rate. When you have 40% of people who apparently are able-bodied, but they're not working, and then you look toward Mexico or Central America to bring in needed workers, something's really wrong. We were always told, remember just 15 years ago, that artificial intelligence, the internet, mechanization, industrialization, they were really going to put us all out of work because we're going to mechanize everything. Mm-hmm. And we had computers, and now we can't even get a carpenter or an electrician to come to your home. There's nobody working. And everybody says that. Everybody says, I can't get labor. You talk to any area, any employer in any field, that's the first thing they said. I can't get labor. And even the left has dropped talk of the minimum wage because the market is adjudicating wages that are higher than the minimum wage by a considerable sum, especially here in California.
Well, and if I may, I think that need in our free market society actually connects back to disrupting universities and academia, because hopefully we'll have more people getting their skills in carpentry and in being a mechanic or an HVAC repairman, and there being great value, not only personal value, but also financial value in being a blue-collar worker or learning a trade instead of getting an advanced degree in social studies. All right, we've got one more with Victor Davis Hanson as we save America. One more on his list of 10 coming up on O'Connor Tonight.